A manhunt is underway in East Texas after a convicted murderer escaped from a prison bus. 46-year-old Gonzalo Lopez is serving a life sentence for capital murder. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice said he was able to overpower a bus driver and stab him, forcing the bus off the road. And then he was able to run from the bus. The search area covers a section of I-45 near Centerville, about halfway between Dallas and Houston. The bus was headed to Huntsville, where Lopez had a medical appointment. None of the other prisoners left the bus. Schools in the area are closed today, while that manhunt continues for the escaped killer.
Tonight, and developing the manhunt to find an escaped inmate who's eluded authorities for a week now.
Gonzalo Lopez somehow managed to slip out of his cuffs on a prison transport bus and a metal cage, and getting away from 2 correctional officers. The massive search is happening in Centerville, 2 hours north of Houston. That's where our Brittany Ford is. And officers perhaps looking to change the focus of that search, Brittany?
Well, Lynn, that's right, and officers have been here as a staging area over the last couple of weeks. You can see, or week rather, you can see that they're still holding off a portion of this roadway here. Officials telling me that they're planning to move this search effort to a different part of the area this afternoon into the weekend. No details on where, but you can take a look at your screen right now. This is video the Department of Criminal Justice released just yesterday, giving us a better idea of what's happening over the last couple of days here in this part of Leon County. Officials addressing questions that there may have been a car following the prison bus between Gatesville and Highway 7 where Lopez was escaped. A spokesperson for the department says no suspicious activity has been found. As this manhunt continues, they had this message to the community.
This is a very dangerous man. Back in 2005, he killed somebody with a pickaxe. In 2004, he shot at an officer. So if he has that device, whatever it was that he used to cut through the door and also to stab the officer, folks need to be aware he may still have that on him.
Now, if you see Lopez, you should call 911 or your local law enforcement agency immediately. There had been rumors that Lopez was potentially arrested in the Waco area. We were able to confirm with Waco police that that rumor circulating online is in fact false. Mia.
The search carries on tonight. Brittany Ford, thank you.
We are following breaking news tonight. 2 adults and 3 children are found dead up in Centerville.
Tonight, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice says it believes escaped inmate Gonzalo Lopez killed this family who's from Houston. Zach Tawatari joining us live from Centerville with more. Zach.
This situation with even more twists tonight. Tragic at that. Lopez still not in custody, and the family you mentioned, 2 adults and 3 children, are dead. We know that the Texas Criminal Department of Justice was having a press conference here earlier tonight, updating us on all these details. They say law enforcement received a call earlier this evening from someone concerned about an elderly relative. When they responded, they found the bodies of the family. We learned tonight that family is from Houston, and the house was a weekend-type residence. TDCJ believes that family just got to that house today. Now, authorities say Lopez may be driving their vehicle, a white 1999 Chevy Silverado with the license plate DPV 4520. He's been on the run for about 3 weeks, ever since he stabbed the driver of a prison transport bus and ran into the woods, and he's currently serving back-to-back life sentences for deadly crimes in 2 different countries. Authorities are warning the public that this is a very dangerous person. Now, we did not get any idea of how the family was murdered, whether they were shot or what the circumstances were surrounding that. But investigators say because the vehicle is missing, the belief is that he's out of the area, saying anywhere in Texas is the place they'd look. But again, Lopez is considered to be armed and dangerous, and the public has to be careful. In Centerville, Zach Tawatari, KHOU 11 News.
Yeah, and sadly, somebody asked about the children. Do we know how old any of these people are? We don't have identities, but they did say the children are minors.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Very sad. And Gonzalo Lopez currently on Texas's 10 most wanted fugitives list. So that search will continue.
A grandfather and his 4 grandsons were identified as the 5 victims murdered by an escaped convict inside of a cabin north of Houston.
Family friends say Mark Collins and his 4 grandsons, Waylon, Carson, Hudson, and Bryson, had left the Houston area Thursday to spend a weekend of hunting and fishing at a cabin in Centerville in Leon County, about 100 miles north of Houston.
Authorities say sometime after they arrived, Gonzalo Lopez murdered them. Lopez was found and killed late last night after a shootout near San Antonio. Fox 4's Blake joins us now.
Yeah, Heather and Steve, we heard from a family friend and pastor tonight. While they were reluctant to criticize law enforcement, there are clearly many unanswered questions as to whether this could have all been avoided. It was at this Leon County ranch about 2 hours south of Dallas on I-45 where the Collins family experienced the unimaginable.
I've been working with homicide survivors now for 30 plus years, and just when you think you've seen it all, you haven't.
At a news conference in the Houston area where the family lived, a family friend, pastor, and victims advocate announced the victims' names. Brothers, 18-year-old Waylon, 16-year-old Carson, and 11-year-old Hudson. Their cousin, 11-year-old Bryson, and grandfather, 66-year-old Mark. David Crane is a law enforcement officer and family friend.
Those kids were bright, shining stars. We coached them through baseball. And these next few days are going to be tough on all of us.
The victims had traveled to the family ranch, a place they frequently go in the summer to fish. It was not far from where an inmate and convicted murderer, Gonzalo Lopez, was last seen May 12th. Officials say he had managed to break out of restraints and stabbed a bus driver during a prison transport. He hadn't been seen since. But around 6 Thursday night, a relative of the Collins called law enforcement after not hearing from the group at the ranch. Officers arrived to find all 5 dead, and authorities announced Lopez was believed responsible, on the run in a truck taken from the ranch.
It's unclear whether Lopez was already there or was casing the structure and just waiting for someone to come in.
Law enforcement in Atascosa County, south of San Antonio, spotted the truck later Thursday night, sparking a brief chase.
The suspect stuck a rifle out of the window of the truck and fired several shots. He turned on this street here, which is Cypress. He went down there and struck a telephone pole.
4 deputies got into a shootout with Lopez. The sheriff's office says he was armed with an AR-15 and handgun, but eventually killed. No deputies hurt.
We are very saddened that the murders happened, but I will tell you that we are breathing a sigh of relief that Lopez will not be able to hurt anyone else.
Now questions are turning to how a dangerous criminal got out in the first place, allowing him the opportunity to take 5 more lives.
We will conduct a serious incident review. Anytime you have something serious like this, it's incumbent upon us to go backwards to figure out how did he escape? How did he beat our security protocols in order to leave that transport vehicle?
David Crane, that family friend and law enforcement officer, said he's been in touch with Rangers about their investigation. He says that Rangers told him that there was a burglary at the house next door 3 days prior that's been linked to Lopez, and he says he doesn't know whether the Collins were made aware of that prior to deciding to visit the ranch. The Rangers have not yet confirmed those details. Stephen, Heather.
Yeah, that would be something we all would want to know. All right, Blake.
People in a Jourdanton neighborhood are feeling a bit safer today after a frightening night. Many watched as a statewide manhunt for a 46-year-old killer came to a deadly end, practically in their backyards. Police and sheriff's deputies in Jourdanton shot and killed escaped inmate Gonzalo Lopez during a gun battle last night. As Katrina Weber tells us, for one man, it stirred up thoughts of other recent violence.
The end of the road for an escaped inmate came in the middle of a Jourdanton neighborhood. Law enforcement officers there spotted 46-year-old Gonzalo Lopez, a convicted murderer who escaped from a prison bus last month, driving a stolen truck late last night. They used spike strips to try to stop him.
The suspect stuck a rifle out of the window of the truck and fired several shots. He turned on this street here, which is Cypress.
Investigators say that led to a short chase, with things turning even more violent. The sheriff says after Lopez fired at the officers the first time, he came across this field where he knocked down this telephone pole. He then traveled across over here where he hit a second pole.
He exited his truck. He fired additional rounds. At least 4 officers returned fire.
Lopez was hit and killed. All of this came hours after Lopez, already serving life for capital murder, killed again. Investigators say he broke into a home yesterday about 250 miles away in Centerville and murdered 5 people, including 4 children, then drove off in their pickup. It's the same truck he was driving when he ended up in Jourdanton.
I was asleep, and then I went to the restroom, and then I saw all the police ones. I said, oh my God, there's going to be another, Uvalde.
Balderas took cover inside his home during the violence. Later, he reflected on what police say Lopez did to others.
He killed 5 innocent people. Right now, he's burning in hell.
The Texas Rangers now are investigating it all. Katrina Weber, KSAT 12 News.
Right now, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice is not saying if they feel responsible for all of the deaths of those 5 innocent people. Their suspected killer, Gonzalo Lopez, escaped from a prison bus May 12th and got killed in a shootout last night near San Antonio. We told you about this on Eyewitness News at 10 last night. Well, now ABC 13's Daniela Hurtado is live in Centerville with what we know so far and what neighbors are saying. We can only imagine they are extremely shaken up here, Daniela.
Absolutely, Maida. A grandfather and his 4 grandchildren senselessly murdered by someone who should have been behind bars. Crime Stoppers during that news conference just now called this a preventable situation. Tonight, this small town is heartbroken, shaken up, and they tell us the last few weeks have been quite unsettling, knowing an inmate was here just lurking in their community. Centerville, Texas is home to fewer than 1,000 people. It also became the landing spot for inmate Gonzalo Lopez, who escaped from a prison bus and lurked in the woods for weeks.
Scared, no, unsettled. We don't lock our doors usually, and it's to have someone that close that was that dangerous and clearly didn't have a lot of any kind of value for life.
She says her home was a part of the red zone, only a mile from the ranch where a grandfather and his 4 grandchildren were murdered by who police say was likely Lopez.
That was extremely sad. The community is very saddened over this.
Nick, the Centerville barber, says his big question is how did the inmate even break out from a metal barrier?
Both have a lot of questions about how someone could, get through this grating and the amount of time that it would take to saw through that grating without being detected by either of the officers on that bus.
Carrie Blackinger extensively covered the TDCJ for years. She says her contacts in the prison system are wondering how this even happened.
We have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how that happened. At the end of the day, we will conduct a serious incident review to determine exactly how Gonzalo Lopez was able to break free from his hand restraints, cut open a gate in order to get to the bus driver and stab the bus driver.
The Jourdanton Police Department were able to track down Lopez in their city last night. Police say he shot at them and they killed him. TDCJ reps say the suspect likely got the firearms from the home he's accused of murdering 5 people. Now, representatives with the TDCJ refused to go on camera and answer questions today. All they said is that they are investigating how exactly this inmate escaped from their custody. Now, during that news conference, a friend of the murdered family says they're unaware if they knew of the break-in that the fugitive had done earlier in the week. The same friend said if the grandfather would have known, he would have never exposed the children to this situation. Now, as for the officers, the TDCJ did confirm one of the officers in that van the day that inmate escaped is back at work. The other officer is on something that they call approved leave. They wouldn't elaborate what exactly that meant. Reporting live in Centerville, Daniela Hurtado, ABC 13.
Police say an escaped inmate murdered 5 members of one family, including 4 children, before he was killed in a shootout with police. Hello, I'm Steve Eager.
Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes. The 5 victims, 4 children and their grandfather, were killed near the town of Centerville outside Houston. Gonzalo Lopez had been serving a life sentence for capital murder. He was being transported in a prison bus 3 weeks ago when he attacked the driver and escaped. Fox 4's Sean Rabb joins us now live with the very latest from police. Sean.
Heather, he was on the run for 21 days, and Gonzalo Lopez, it appears, had made up his mind he'd not be taken into custody again. A shootout ending the largest and longest manhunt in recent memory across our state, this time South Central Texas.
The suspect stuck a rifle out of the window of the truck and fired several shots. He turned on this street here, which is Cypress.
That would turn into a dead end for prison escapee Gonzalo Lopez. The 46-year-old, convicted for a 2006 murder, escaped from a prison transport bus as he was being moved from North to Central Texas, stabbing the driver in the hand and running to freedom last month. Lopez, linked to the Mexican Mafia, had avoided 500 law enforcement officers looking for him, with a $50,000 reward on his name. Thursday, the search intensifying after 5 family members were found dead near Centerville in Leon County. A grandfather and 4 kids vacationing at a weekend home. Their white pickup missing. The Tomball School District near Houston posting on Twitter grief counselors available for students and staff, sending a letter about the deaths to district families. Gonzalo Lopez accused of the killings.
He's serving a life sentence already, so he didn't want to go back to prison, obviously, and we knew what kind of person he was and what kind of action he probably was going to take.
The hunt for Lopez started May 12th near Centerville, more than 200 miles from where it ended south of San Antonio. An alert officer spotted that white pickup stolen from the murdered family along Highway 16 between Poteet and Jordanton, 35 miles or so from San Antonio.
The officer stayed behind him so not to alert the suspect that he was being tailed until we got close to Jordanton, where Jordanton police spiked the tires.
With 4 spiked tires, Lopez tried to get away.
He went down there and struck a telephone pole and bounced off of that telephone pole, went down the road a little bit further, crashed into another telephone pole and a fence. He exited his truck. He fired additional rounds. At least 4 officers returned fire.
He died in a blaze of bullets. His run to freedom ended.
As we're concerned, yes, sir, this dangerous individual is off the street, and no officers were injured, no citizens were injured. So yes, it's a good evening.
And this evening, we've not yet seen any report from the Department of Public Safety. We were hoping to learn more information. At some point Thursday, law enforcement were informed that Lopez was in San Antonio. Maybe that high-dollar reward convinced someone to make a phone call to police. Still a lot of investigation here, but not about the end of this, rather about the beginning and whether he had help escaping from leg restraints and a special area in that prison.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Greenlit Gang TV. I really appreciate you guys checking out the channel today. I've got a really crazy, sad, intense, violent story to bring you guys. Got you guys a video out last night. Woke up this morning, was pumped up, was motivated. I was like, man, I want to get another one going. Started doing some research. Almost picked a couple stories, and then thank God I landed on this one just because of the coverage on it, the media coverage, the violence that was involved, the sheer craziness of the story and the individual we're going to be talking about. Just was like, man, this is going to be perfect for today's content. Really hope you guys enjoy it. I really enjoyed making this one. We're going to be covering an infamous murderer by the name of Gonzalo Lopez out of Texas, a Mexican Mafia associate, a career criminal who ended up committing very atrocious acts, culminated with the murder of a man and his 4 grandchildren in Texas. And the murder should have never happened because Gonzalo Lopez was incarcerated until he escaped from a Texas prison bus. So, really quick, Gonzalo Artemio Lopez, born February 10th, 1976 in Westlake, Texas. A lifetime of crime, you guys. This guy, you know how they talk about being born bad? I would say Gonzalo Lopez fits that to a T. His criminal history dates back to basically when he turned an adult. Sometimes it's harder to find juvenile records, but dates back to 1994. He was convicted of aggravated assault, possession of marijuana, failure to stop and render aid during a hit and run, which means so he hit and run, hurt somebody, didn't stick around, dipped out, and also unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. In 1996, he was convicted of all charges and sentenced to do 8 years in prison. That did not slow Gonzalo Lopez down. If anything, he went to prison. I'm sure that's when some of the affiliations with the Mexican Mafia and other gangs picked up, and his penchant for violence absolutely picked up. On May 11th, 2004, Lopez was a passenger, and this is a really crazy story, guys. He was a passenger in a vehicle. It was observed speeding by 2 Zapata County Sheriff's deputies. As the police attempted to pull the vehicle over, the driver sped away. Now, Gonzalo Lopez was the passenger in this car. A high-speed chase follows, involving police officers from both Zapata and Webb County. During the chase, shots were fired at the police by both the driver and Lopez. The vehicle was later stopped, and both men fled on foot. You see that a lot in police chases, right? The driver, you can't drive forever, right? You're almost running out of gas. Maybe the car's breaking down because you're doing 100 miles an hour. And eventually you got to find a spot that you think, quickly think on the fly, hey, okay, every man for himself, I'm out. Which is what happened. They take off on foot. The driver is captured the following day. So they both end up getting away. Well, the driver gets captured right away and was sentenced to do 60 years in prison for attempted capital murder of a police officer. Now, remember, they are in Texas. Texas does not play. Texas has an express lane to execute people, right? Huntsville, Texas, the famous Brown building where the executions take place. You see a lot of protests going on year-round because year-round people are being killed. And, Texas, an express lane to death. That's the best way to put it. So, the driver gets caught. Lopez was not caught. Now, remember, this happened in May of 2004. We fast forward almost an entire year later. On March 23rd, 2005, Gonzalo Lopez and an acquaintance known only as Rick, they broke into the home of 37-year-old Jose Guadalupe Ramirez in Westlake, Texas. Armed with guns, the men tied up Ramirez and threatened his wife at gunpoint. They then kidnapped Ramirez and took him with them in a red car. Ramirez's wife later received a phone call from him where he had told her he was all right. However, the calls later stopped. The following morning, Ramirez's wife called the police and reported the kidnapping. Gonzalo Lopez and Rick, now this is crazy. This is what I'm telling you about Gonzalo Lopez. This isn't why I wanted to really tell this story in depth. Because this is not just about the murder of the Collins family or his escape. Gonzalo Lopez was really putting in some work, was really about that life. Him and Rick were working for the La Mana drug cartel based in Tamaulipas, Mexico. Man, I know I butchered that. I'm sorry. According to Lopez, the La Mana leader, Juan Lerma, had ordered them to kidnap Ramirez because he owed the cartel $40,000. Yep, that'll get you killed. The cartel had supposedly fronted Ramirez with marijuana and cocaine. Don't know why you'd ever get a front from the cartel. Just saying, if you can't pay up front to me, I'm not going to take a front from the cartel. But hey, to each his own. Which he never repaid them for. I read these stories and I'm like, what? If this is true, what does Rick's Lopez's acquaintance. Jose Guadalupe Ramirez, with a wife and I'm sure children, you get fronted $40,000 of dope from a cartel, then you don't pay the cartel. It's very hard for me to have sympathy. I'm not saying you deserve to die, but I'm not sure what you thought was going to happen. So, and again, this is supposedly. They supposedly had fronted Ramirez with marijuana and cocaine, which he never repaid to them. Following the kidnapping, Lopez and Rick took Ramirez to the home of Lopez's mother, who was complicit in this because they kept him tied up in her shed. They then held him for ransom, causing his family to turn over 3 trucks, drugs, and money. The trucks were given to Juan Lerma, the leader of the cartel, while Lopez and Rick kept the money and the drugs for themselves. According to Lopez, Lerma then ordered them to kill Ramirez, which they do. Lopez goes, okay, no problem. He killed Ramirez later that night with a pickaxe, dear God, before burying his body in a wooded area. A pickaxe, huh? Man, there's certain things I read about these cases that really tell me about the individuals and certain key points. That is a key point for me. You killed him with a pickaxe. That tells me there is a part of you that enjoys what you are doing, right? Because that takes effort. That is very gruesome. That's going to be gruesome to watch. And you've got to be a special kind of crazy to be doing that kind of stuff. And in my opinion, cartel members, they're serial killers, if not worse. They're not just doing it for the gang. They enjoy what they do. They are the serial killers. They are the worst of the worst. They're up there with Bundy. They're up there with the Green River Killer, Israel Keys, you name it. These guys are worse. And they've probably got triple to quadruple the amount of bodies when you really, really think about it. Don't believe me? Google it, right? Google cartel deaths. See what happens to you in Mexico and in the States. They They buried him in a wooded area. An autopsy later confirmed that Ramirez caused the deaths with 3 chop-type wounds to the head. Now, eventually, Lopez gets captured in April 2005. Following a tip from a confidential informant, Lopez was arrested. Ramirez's wife positively identified him from a police lineup as one of the men who broke into her home and kidnapped her husband. Later that month, Lopez led authorities to the location where he had buried Ramirez's body, but he refused to name his accomplice. So he's a stand-up guy in that sense. On February 14th, 2006, Lopez's trial for capital murder began. On February 16th, he was found guilty of 1 count of capital murder and 1 count of aggravated kidnapping. So I'm like, well, that's a two-day trial? I wonder if that's a typo on there. But yes, regardless, he's found guilty of capital murder and aggravated kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison. Lucky he didn't get the death penalty. His accomplice, Rick, was never identified or found, which is pretty crazy, right? So the guy that does this with Lopez, Rick, never identified. While in prison, authorities learned of Lopez's involvement in the 2004 car chase and shooting of police officers. On December 13th, 2007, he was found guilty of attempted capital murder of a police officer and was handed down another life sentence, which at that point, it's kind of whatever because Texas life is damn near life, right? So he's in there. He doesn't like being in there, I'm sure. So what do you do when you've got a lot of time on your hands? What do you do when you've got a lot of free time? You're going to try to figure out how to get out, especially when you've got double life. It's just kind of one of those things where, man, what do you have to lose? Because, okay, you get out, you get captured. What are they going to do? I mean, I guess you could go to a more high security prison, but it's just one of those things where it's like, man, if I'm doing double life, there's only so much you can do to me. So on May 12th, 2022, Lopez was one of 16 prisoners on board a Texas Department of Criminal Justice transport bus that was traveling to a medical appointment. And this is what I've seen with some of these prison escapes and prison like murders. They plan it around the guards and the jails, prison's most vulnerable time as far as security goes. Medical, dental, when there's movement, right? Because no matter how tight the security is, you're still vulnerable. If you get the right people on board with you, if you get the right amount of help. You saw this with the Troy Kell video I did. You know, they planned medical appointments, him and his accomplice. And things can happen, man. Things can happen in a blink of an eye, and you don't know how people are going to react, including police. You'd like to think that everybody's going to do the right thing and man their stations and handle it, but that doesn't always happen. And this is kind of a case of this. So, or there's help from the inside, right? It's an inside job. 2 veteran prison officers were also on board this bus. During the journey, now remember, 16 people, Lopez managed to remove his handcuffs and use a sharp object to cut through a metal door that was separating the prisoners from the driver. This, to me, screams inside job. I'm sorry, but he removed his handcuffs, has a sharp object, cuts through the metal barricade, and gets to the driver. He crawled into the driver's section where he stabbed the CO driving the bus. The bus stopped and a fight broke out between Lopez and the prison officers. Lopez got off the bus and was followed by the officers. He then returned to the bus and drove off, with the bus now containing no officers on board. As he drove away, the officers fired at the bus and hit the tires. Lopez managed to drive the vehicle for a mile before wrecking it. He then fled the bus on foot and escaped into some woods where he successfully evaded law enforcement. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. So he slips his cuffs, cuts a hole, stabs the driver, gets into it with 2 veteran officers, gets off the bus, runs around the outside, gets back in and takes, something about that just doesn't add up to me. I don't know. I really, really want to know what you guys think down below. Comment if you think an inside job, if you had help, or if they were really, really that incompetent. I don't know what to believe. So, he successfully evades law enforcement. The following day, Lopez was added to the Texas 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list. God. On May 14th, the reward for information leading to his arrest increased to $50,000. The officers recovered, and the stab wounds to the bus driver were not life-threatening. Now, this is where we get to the Collins family. This is sad. So, less than a month later, on late June 2nd into June 3rd, Lopez breaks into a ranch owned by the Collins family in Centerville, Texas. At the ranch, and this is bad, this is where I part with Lopez, and I believe he is an absolute animal. He murders 66-year-old Mark Collins and 4 of his grandchildren. 18-year-old Waylon Collins, 16-year-old Carson Collins, 11-year-old Hudson Collins. All of those three were brothers and their cousin, 11-year-old Bryson Collins. Medical examiners later disclosed that all 5 family members died of gunshot and stab wounds. After the murders, Lopez stole several guns from the ranch, including an AR-15 as well as a white pickup truck, which he fled in. That's the single-cab Chev you see. A concerned relative of the family that had not heard from Mark contacted the police later that day. Police arrived at the ranch around 6 p.m. and discovered the bodies of the 5 family members. That is awful. Even reading that, like I said, some of these stories are harder to read than others. This is one of those. Lopez is an animal. He deserved the death penalty. I part with him all the way across the board. You murdered 4 children and their grandson. What is wrong with you on so many levels? It's not like you had to kill the kids. I could see having the grandpa be a threat, but the kids were going to do nothing. And it's not like people didn't know you were out or what you were doing. So why did you kill 4 kids? We will never know. Family contacts police. Lopez was immediately named as a suspect, and police soon learned guns in the family pickup had been stolen. So his security level threat is at an all-time high. Police then sent out a statewide alert informing police to be on the lookout for the 1999 Chevrolet Silverado. So we go into June 3rd now. A deputy sheriff from Atascosa County spotted the pickup truck and confirmed the license plate matched the one stolen. Officers tailed Lopez, and we were instructed to hold back until he entered Jourdanton, Texas. So, more officers could assist in apprehending him. Spike trips were deployed across the highway Lopez was traveling on, which he drove over, puncturing all the tires. Lopez continued to evade police and drove through a field before entering the city limits or Jourdanton. Lopez then shot at police. So, he's got an MO here, right? When he gets into police chases or he tries to get pulled over, you know damn well he's going to start shooting. They expected it. They were equipped. He started shooting through the truck's window with an AR-15 style rifle that he had stolen, which he had stolen, obviously, from the ranch and the Collins family. Afterward, he lost control, drove into a utility pole, and crashed into a fence. He gets out of the truck and began shooting at officers. I swear this is stuff out of a movie. 4 officers returned fire, killing him instantly. No officer was struck or injured during the exchange of gunfire, but Lopez did manage to hit a patrol vehicle's windshield. And so Lopez is dead. On June 6th, a couple days later, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice announced it would be suspending inmate transports as it conducted a review. And the news thing, it's like they review if they are to take blame. It's like, well, who else is to take blame? He cuts a hole. He stabs your driver. He gets away from 2 other officers. You guys can't catch him. He murders a family of 5. But it almost like I get mad reading this because it's just like one of those things where, you know, the gang member stuff, I get it. He's a Texas Mexican Mafia member. He's been in prison. He's doing double life. He doesn't want to go back. But why kill the 4 kids? I don't get it. You can rob the grandpa, take the guns, sit the kids down, say, you're not going to do anything or I will do something to you, and then leave. They all knew it was you. It didn't matter. They didn't need to have eyewitnesses. It's not like you were leaving witnesses that didn't, oh man, we don't know. It's the guy who just escaped prison, the prison bus who's in the area. I really want to know what you guys think. Really crazy story. I am really glad I got to bring it to you guys. I was really interested in this. I cranked this one out because when I'm super into a story, man, I just work away. So there you have it. Very, very sad. R.I.P. to the Collins family. Gonzalo Lopez, what a sad, crazy life. I will say, though, those shootouts, those high-speed chases, very, very crazy. Like I said, I think if you told this story and said, do you believe it or not? I think a lot of people might say they don't believe it. Well, this all absolutely happened. And in the state of Texas, which is just known for no nonsense. Like I said, they got an express lane to death. But yeah, he managed to pull all this off. All right, guys, until next time, peace.